Ladies and gentlemen, welcome into Three Men Talking Fantasy Football. It is the Week 14 matchup show. I am here with Mr. Thomas Lang and Mr. Anthony Perez. How are you gentlemen today?
Doing good. How you doing, Billy?
I'm doing fantastic.
Sir. Very good. Are we ready to tackle a very, very, very important and impactful Week 14?
Yes, we are.
Get into it.
Last week of the season for 90% of leagues. So, time to get that final win. Let's go.
That's right. All right, let's rumble. So this week we have the second Bipocalypse. So we got a couple teams, and by a couple I mean a lot of teams, not playing this week. That's Baltimore, Denver, Houston, Indianapolis, New England, and Washington. So that's 3 less games. So let's jump right in. Thursday night football, the Green Bay Packers at the Detroit Lions. Detroit minus 3.5 points. That's the FanDuel spread. The over-under there is 51.5 points. Let's go. Ready to rumble on this game. Let's get to
Detroit. I think Detroit is going to cover that spread by themselves.
They might just. I would take the over myself because Detroit has a lot of people from defense on IR. A bunch of people got hurt. They're waiting for guys to come back. It's one of those games that the score could just get up and up and up and up. So we got a lot of guys in the must start category. Josh Jacobs, you're playing him. Yeah, that mini injury thing, but he just does maintenance every week. Mr. Gibbs and Mr. Montgomery, you're playing them. Jaden Reed, you're playing them. St. Brown, you're playing them. And we got a couple iffies here. How do you guys see this game going?
I see this going in favor of Green Bay, and to the point that you made.
Interesting.
It's to the point that you made earlier. They have a lot of defensive guys on the IR. They really have no kind of pass rush right now. You saw it in the Thanksgiving game. Caleb Williams had a lot of time to throw the ball, move around in the pocket. Jordan Love, who's way above Caleb Williams right now, I think he's going to have a good game throwing in the air, and I can see Green Bay pulling this off.
I don't see it that way. I do see that the Lions do take the game. Right now for the past 4 weeks, you got Amon-Ra St. Brown at number 3 ranked. He has 40 targets for 412, 4 touchdowns receiving. So he's the number 3 receiver right now, and the highest ranked receiver right now on the Green Bay Packers is Jaden Reed at number 28. Within the past 4 weeks, 17 targets. That's so low for him, but he has 13 receptions, 186 yards, and 3 touchdowns as well. That's not far away from Jameson Williams at 25 targets, 17 for 269 and 1 touchdown. So I'm going to lean towards the running backs, and also the receiving core of the Lions. If it's going to be a shootout, Jordan Love has been playing okay here and there. He had a good game last week, but he's just been so up and down. I just can't trust him to have a valid fantasy week. He could have, a top 15 quarterback week this week, I think. I don't think he's a streamer this week if that's the case. But if you feel like it's going to be above the 50, what was it, 50 and a half, 51 and a half. Yeah, I see it being kind of like a 20-point game at the end of the game, favoring the Lions.
You might be right, but in a game like this, you want to try to get as many pieces as you can. So,
well, yeah, you're like we said, the bipocalypse element of it is, you are starting Jameson Williams this week in your flex.
That's what I was going to say.
Or potentially your wide receiver too.
I can't see how you sit Jameson Williams. I can't see how you sit Tucker Kraft.
I can't see how you sit Laporta again. Laporta was targeted for 2 touchdowns last week, so I think that he's going to get his targets back. He might get some more run and more targets between the 20s this week, and then be the red zone target as well. If they're going to be scoring points through the air, not saying that Goff is going to have the same Goff week as it did last week, but because I think Gibbs and Montgomery going to have some nice weeks, but a nice week this week. But Laporta is still going to get his fair share. So.
What do you think? What do you think, Anthony? You've always had comments on Laporta.
Listen, I said Laporta was going to get on the board last week for Thanksgiving, and he feasted with 2 touchdowns. I think he's becoming more of a viable red zone target, and I could see him easily putting up another touchdown this week. I think Goff is looking for him more in the red zone than the start of the season. I think Jameson Williams is the one with a little bit of a tougher matchup this week, to be honest with you. Is he primarily playing out of the slot? Do you know?
Jameson Williams
moves around.
Yeah.
I mean,
or they're just kind of moving
he
around.
Rotates around.
Yeah.
Because the same thing with St. Brown. St. Brown sometimes goes in the slot.
Right.
Whoever's playing the slot is going to have a tough matchup against the Lions this week, whether it be Williams at some point, Brown. Proceed with caution with that.
And can you see a Montgomery to Laporta touchdown again this week?
Montgomery throwing a touchdown pass?
Yeah.
Yeah, it depends on how the game flow is going. I mean, I will always love seeing a good.
Hopefully it's fantasy relevant, not to a left tackle.
I was going to say you might get a tackle touchdown. It's funny. It's funny we should bring that up. We left a pretty significant name off here. So Jared Goff. So he can either go for 5 touchdowns because they're smashing them by 50 points, or he could go for 0 touchdowns because they're smashing them by 50 points. I mean, it's just a matter of how they're just scoring touchdowns. It's a level of inconsistency that I would be uncomfortable with, even considering how big the over-under is. But you guys have seen it. You've seen how the Lions are.
To me, there's some level of concern with the Lions, especially after last week, man. Like, it looked like they were going to blow the Bears right out the water, and then the second half was a completely different game, and they looked completely lost. I don't know what happened to them. Credit to Chicago for sticking through and playing tough, and they ultimately probably should have won that game, to be honest with you, if it wasn't for the debacle at the end there with time management. So Green Bay, I think, is a much better team right now than the Bears. So that's why I think that this could swing in the favor of the Packers.
I think if obviously if we're a little nervous about starting Goff this week based on a streamer perspective, I'd feel more confident in starting a Stafford over a Goff this week going against Buffalo this week. So I mean, I think I would favor more towards Stafford over Goff if you're a little leaning towards the running game for the Lions this week, for in control of that game to just close it out. But that game's starting tomorrow, so we got a nice Thursday night football game coming up.
Yes, we do.
A lot of decisions to make shortly.
Oh, yes. So let's move on. Oh, by the way, we should mention, so if you have any of these players, and there's going to be a lot of them in the Thursday night, get them out of your flex position, put them in your running back or wide receiver slot, even for guys that maybe you're kind of testing the water on. If you're going to throw in Jameson Williams, put him right into wide receiver to get him out of your flex, for example.
Yeah,
or if you're going to, oh, by the way, we didn't mention, are we going to take any chances on the secondary options for wide receiver in Green Bay? We just leave them alone? It's like too much of a casino.
I think right now it depends on your situation. Since it is a Thursday game, I don't think that is a decision that I'm willing to make on a starting position for my roster, unless I only have, say, a Wan'Dale Robinson, kind of like a Jordan Addison kind of play. I might feel more confident in starting a Watson over those guys this upcoming week. But again, since it is a Thursday game, it's a very tough decision to make in a week 14. It could be make or break of your season. Some people are just willing to roll the dice. I'm not a dice roller with something like that if I'm in a position to needing to make a playoff seed. So I play a little bit more safe than a boom or bust element.
Okay.
I agree with that. I like playing roulette at the casino, but not when it comes to fantasy football, especially on wide receivers. So,
especially when you've been playing for the past 13 weeks.
Let's move on. Let's move on to our first Sunday game here. We've got the Las Vegas Raiders at the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. Tampa Bay -6.5. The over/under there is 46.5 points. I actually, for people in this room might have seen, I actually dropped the Bucs defense that I've had for a couple weeks.
Which I don't know why.
Because I was disheartened by how well Carolina performed against them. And I've been heartened by how well the Raiders played against the Chiefs. Great call by Mr. Perez, by the way, last week calling that. I think if I was a betting man, I would bet that the Raiders cover this spread. So let's get to the names here. If you've got Baker Mayfield, you are playing him. If you've got Mr. Bucky Irving, running back 1 this past week, you're playing him. Rashad White, we're rolling him out. We're doing the 2 running back thing.
Yeah, you have to.
Yeah,
you have to. If you got them, you're playing them. I really don't think. I mean, if you got them, unless you're really frequent in getting some like heavy waiver wire picks, then those are your starters all season. You're rolling with them. I mean, if anything, Bucky Irving was potentially a waiver wire pickup unless you utilized him as kind of like a cuff with your draft, or you got him early in the season, as he was rolling. But just kind of like your Gibbs and Montgomery, I just think you're rolling with them every single week right now.
Mike Evans, you're playing him. Jacoby Myers, you're playing him. We can't. I mean,
Mr. 86 targets per game.
86 targets a game. We can't sing his praises high enough on a team that has not been that good. Although, like we said, they're a very scrappy kind of team. Mr. Perez, are you starting Cade Otton with confidence?
Yeah, no, I am this week. Last week, he had a great matchup. He had targets. He had 7 targets last week, just couldn't make anything out of them. And I think it'll be the same this week. I know his production took a dip since Mike Evans came back, but the Raiders defense has allowed 9+ points to the tight ends last 8 games, and including 3 who have scored at least 25 points since week 8. So I think the matchup is another favorable matchup for Cade Otton. If you have him as your starting tight end, you are going to play him with confidence.
I'd lock in any time touchdown with him.
Bold prediction.
Well, Baker did look for him twice in the red zone last week. Like I said, he just couldn't come down with the actual production. So the targets are there. I do feel confident in that.
And that's, just to piggyback off Anthony, I mean, that's something that we were talking about in the fear of Evans coming back. Like we thought, all right, maybe are some of these targets, getting taken away from Cade Otton. Maybe a little bit, but not extensive. I think that he's getting now not the first look, but he's getting the second look, which sometimes is not the most favorable look based on how the defensive scheme is running right there. So I think that Cade Otton still is going to get anywhere from 5 to 6 targets a game. He just got to come down with the ball, and if he's getting those red zone opportunities, you're looking at potentially a touchdown per week, with that defense, that offense rolling down the field, especially with 2 of those running backs. If Irving for some reason goes down again twice on the 1-yard line, that's either a Cade Otton or Evans touchdown.
I agree. I did mention this past week on the waiver show that if Cade Otton can't do it here, then it's, sound the alarm. But I'd roll him out. Yep. in this match. Brock Bowers, you're playing him. Mr. Lang with confidence. Mr. Lang, are like we talked about on the waiver show. Are we just completely hands off on the Raiders running back situation here?
So again, just we discussed this for yesterday's show or today's drop. I don't think that you are starting any of those guys with confidence. If you start those guys, that means that they're either in a flex. They should not be in an RB2 position. If you're starting one of them, you're starting Abdullah.
Not sincere.
No. You're starting Abdullah because I do think that Vegas is going to be playing from behind. They might make it into a game, but I think they're going to be playing from behind significantly through the game. So yeah, I just kind of like if Denver was playing this week, same situation. Don't do it. Unless you just love rolling dices and love gambling, don't do it.
I agree.
I'm actually going to disagree with you guys.
Interesting.
And you
Yeah.
love gambling.
Yeah.
He's the Raiders whisperer here.
So I actually like Sincere McCormick a lot, and I think
You don't think it was game script?
What's that?
You don't think it was game script?
I don't. I think they genuinely found something.
Are you sincere about that?
I am being very sincere about that.
Very good.
I think, since he came onto the scene, we'll say the last 2 weeks, he only had 5 rushes attempts against the Broncos, but he went 5 for 33, and then against the Chiefs, he went 12 for 64, which really isn't all that bad. I think if Alexander Madison and Zamir White are out, and even if Zamir White's in and Madison and Abdullah are out, I'm still starting Sincere over White. I think White is completely useless at this point. And even I think he runs better than Abdullah. So I could see him taking that lead role from Abdullah if both those running backs are out. But Tommy, you do have a good point. It could also be game script and game dependent as well. But yeah, I do think that Sincere looks like the better back out of that group.
Sincere is getting 5.7 yards per carry in his carries the past 4 weeks. So I see what you're saying. 5 weeks. So I see what you're saying with that, but I think it is game script.
And today they also signed him off the practice squad today.
Yeah, I mean, it's probably showing that either Madison or White are gonna be benched again this week. So
I do believe that.
It's Anthony. The way I see it, it's such a bold way, the way that you're saying it. Like, you had McCormick, who had a great game this past game. The week before, Abdullah had a great game. 3 weeks ago, Madison had a great game. I mean, we're talking about, like Tommy said, dices that we're throwing.
Let me give you,
or dice if we're speaking proper English. But yes, I agree with him.
Let me give you this quote here from Mr. Antonio Pierce. He says, "What you're seeing on game days is what we saw every day at practice. A guy that ran hard, runs tough, good vision, decisive."
He's bringing up coach speak. Okay.
First guy is not tackling him, and that's been a big key for us in the run game. He's making the most of his opportunities, and he's going to continue to keep getting opportunities. He goes, "I think it was 12 carries he got last week. Hopefully we can bump him up more this week."
Okay.
If Antonio Pierce is telling the truth, McCormick could be in line here for a big game.
And when McCormick fumbles the ball, that goes away.
We'll have to see. I'm saying if you need a desperate play this week, right? And nobody else.
I remember that coach speak when Bill Belichick used to say, blah, 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 blah.
I hate
fumble the ball. He hit the bench. He's on the practice squad.
Talk about running backs, but
Anthony, for the rest of this, like this set of matchups, we're going to use Sincere McCormick as a barometer to be like, oh, would you start him or him when we get to, like,
you guys knocked on me for Christian Rodriguez last week, if I got that name right again. I think I said his name wrong
again. He calls it out. You're right,
and he had a great game.
You're right.
Game. So I don't know if you need a running back. Look, I'm someone. Perfect example. I'm someone in the position here where I lost all my running backs except for one. You know what I mean? If I have nobody to play,
yes,
I might as well.
This is a fair point. And again, like, you're not even. It's not like you're prognosticating. You're making a value judgment on, hey, he looked good. He's might be getting more snaps in a game where we're saying that the Raiders are going to try to be competitive. Yeah,
is he fantasy relevant?
I do. Yeah, absolutely. Right. I honestly believe he's fantasy relevant, but we all know how things can change in the blink of an eye, sadly.
Yep, just like Taysom Hill.
Yes. Let's move to the next game. We've got the Cleveland Browns at the Pittsburgh Steelers. Pittsburgh -6.5. The over-under there is 44.5 points. Despite the amazingness that Mr. Winston showed us this past week, they're not giving Cleveland too many points there. Cleveland's implied point total is 19 points. That being said, we are Jameis fans on this podcast.
Yes.
So we think they're going to outperform here a little bit. And actually, we've gotten to the point where we actually think Jameis might be matchup proof, especially for fantasy.
I honestly think if you have Jameis, or if you don't have Jameis and you're rolling through a problem and you're looking at projections, say if you're starting your you're starting your rosters based on projections, pick up Jameis and start him. I think he's projected for 14 points this week. Doesn't matter. Start him. He's going to double that or even triple that. Start him this week. Do you remember last week when Pittsburgh was in a shootout?
That's right.
They were in a shootout last week. They're going to be in a shootout again this week. Jameis is going to throw probably 3 or 4 interceptions, but he's going to throw 3 or 4 touchdowns, and he's going to throw for 400 yards.
And to your point, Cleveland was just in a game with Denver, who's a vaunted quote unquote
the best,
defense.
one of the, a better defense as of right now on paper, better defense statistically this year than Pittsburgh. And who knows, is Watt playing this week? If Watt is not playing this week, that's not pressure. There's no pressure. I mean, there's pressure still, but not as nearly as much pressure as there should be. Winston is a must start this week.
He threw for 219 yards in the snow against Pittsburgh.
Yeah,
conditions are going to be much better for him, so I can definitely see him exceeding. I'll say 280. I want to say 300, but I'll say 280 to be on the safe side. Either way, I still think
317.
I still think that Winston's in line for at least 40 to 50 pass attempts again this game.
Absolutely.
Their run game. And this is something that we've talked about, when it comes to waiver pickups too. And when I first brought up Jameis Winston, the guy's just going to continue to throw the ball. That's his strong suit. Go ahead, Tom.
I will say this. You do remember that Hard Knocks right now is NFC North, right?
It was AFC North.
Sorry, AFC North. So Hard Knocks right now is AFC North. They are, I'm not saying the NFL is scripted, all right? But what I'm saying is they are due for a show. There's going to be another show this week with Jameis, another show this week with Russell Wilson. There's going to be lightning and thunder and fireworks. It's going to be amazing. I cannot wait to watch this game at 1 o'clock.
You know how I know it's not scripted? Because Jameis would have been starting earlier in the year if that was the case.
We got to make sure we get Jameis on a team next year who's going to be he needs to continue to be a starting quarterback just for entertainment purposes in the NFL.
I think he's going to be a starting quarterback for the Cleveland Browns.
How did they get out of that Deshaun Watson deal? You know what I mean?
Just Jameis is just happy enough to be on the field.
Yeah, but I want to see him every day starting. He's good for football.
He's riding his horses into the sunlight and the snow driven mountains. So
with all seriousness though, with 6 teams on a bye, Jameis Winston is a no-brainer at a quarterback play. If you need a quarterback to stream, pick him up, run with him.
Don't worry about the projections. Pick him up, play him.
And Jameis, however much praise we heaped upon him, he's great for fantasy and all his fantasy options. Judge Judy, you're playing him. David Njoku, you're playing him. I would play if Cedric Tillman's available. I would play him. Elijah Moore. I feel like he's the third guy on that depth chart. Maybe the online people might disagree. He's getting targets. Yeah. Right. And like Anthony said, every game he's throwing the ball 40, 50 times. So,
and this is what we discussed yesterday's podcast too. So like it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter the players that are out there. If he's throwing the ball 50 plus times, which he's going to be throwing the ball 50 plus times,
right?
Those guys are getting targets. You're not going to having a player that's getting 24 targets.
Right. So
those guys are getting anywhere from 7 to 9 targets a game.
You starting Nick Chubb? No issues here.
I'd feel comfortable starting Nick Chubb if Watt is not playing.
Okay.
I feel more comfortable with a touchdown if Watt is not playing. Now, in this situation,
I'll check his status. Yeah.
I think he. I mean, he might be coming back this week. He was kind of teetering to come back last week. Even if Watt plays, if Jameis is slinging the ball like that, that's going to open up the field for a draw.
Game time decision on Watt.
Yeah, I think Chubb. He's been looking better, and he looked a little bit better every single week. He's progressively looking faster. This could be the week where they lean a little bit more on him, the play action, he gets rolling. Who knows? I mean, they did, like I said last week too, look for Ford. Ford was a nice target last week too. He had a couple nice plays. He had some dump offs in the backfield. He didn't have a great statistical fantasy football week, but he had good football that opened up the field for Chubb and the rest of the team.
On the Pittsburgh side, I don't know how you sit Russ, but I guess you could find a narrative which says
unlimited.
Said not to put him in. Right, the Subway sandwich guy.
Yep.
We'll get to the backs in just a second. George Pickens, absolutely, no question. Put him in there. Calvin Austin, I know Anthony loves himself some Calvin Austin. I feel like you take your shot, boom or bust.
But is he playing because of he had two massive hits?
Oh, that's right. That's right.
So he had two massive hits last week. He might be out this week because of concussion potential. So
didn't he have another touchdown this past week?
Yes, he did.
Yes, he did. Yeah. After the first hit, he had that then he got a concussion after the touchdown. Mm-hmm. But those two hits were brutal. And for a small guy like Calvin Austin, I mean, he took some heavy hits. I don't think he plays this week, to be honest. I think that opens up the door for Freiermuth a little bit better. Jalen Warren. I agree. I think Jalen Warren's you might see a double backfield with Jalen Warren and Harris.
Yeah, I think it's one of those. We'll temper expectations, but I think it's another one of these backfields that you should / really try to start both of them, Najee Harris and Jalen Warren, especially given you got Jameis Winston on the opposite side. We're saying where it's going to raise the roof, hopefully.
It's not comfort zone like starting, the other guys that we were discussing, like, Gibbs and Montgomery and
right.
White and Irving to an extent. I feel more confident in starting that group of guys than over Harris and Warren. But again, if it's going to be a shootout, Warren can have a dump off pass, screen pass for a touchdown. They are touchdown candidates. I just don't know how many touches Warren gets in this right. game.
And Freiermuth, I mean, he was my favorite tight end pickup this past week. I think especially like you pointed out, if Calvin Austin's out, he's in line for a big game.
Yeah. I really like George Pickens in this game a lot. I know you mentioned it earlier, but I think he might even be a start of the week in fantasy in general. With Russell Wilson under center, he scored 16 points in the last 4 games. He's also seeing a 35% first reach rate in that time, which is awesome. So that means Russell Wilson, his first target is going to George Pickens, and the Browns have allowed 14 touchdowns to wide receivers and given up the 9th most fantasy points to wideouts as well. So
I would be a little cautious. I mean, I would watch. If you're watching the games, it's not fantasy element right now, but it could turn into a fantasy element issue. Pickens has been creating issues on the field, and he's being more targeted by officials based on his antics on the field. Kind of not saying he's Antonio Brown-esque yet, but he is, doing certain things that is putting a target on his back. There could be, hopefully there's no suspension for the fantasy football playoffs. Just keep an eye on him. Hopefully he just, gets his act together, because he's a wonderful talent for that team, and he's been making that team really be super explosive on plays that not many people can make.
So suffice to say, from all of our opinions, I would take the over on that game.
Mm-hmm.
Let's move to a not as nice a game. We have the Jacksonville Jaguars at the Tennessee Titans. Tennessee there is the favorites by 3.5 points. The over-under is 39.5 points. Yuck. Not too many points for Jacksonville and not too much more for Tennessee. You're playing Tony Pollard. You're playing the darling of this past the waiver wire, NWI, Nick Westbrook-Akine. I don't see
anytime touchdown.
Anytime
he's literally this year. He is literally
going to be in the minus now.
Well, he is literally this year Christian McCaffrey of last year. He has not missed. He missed one game, but he has not.
Right. And then he had 2 touchdowns in one game to make up for it. Yeah.
Roll for it. Roll him in.
I couldn't agree more. And Calvin Ridley, I guess, take your shot, right? I mean,
he's getting targets, but he's not getting, the best targets. He has his games. He's kind of like an Jordan Addison. He's kind of like in that realm where he can have a super explosive game, 20 plus points. I right now, if I had both NWI and Ridley on my roster, and I had to choose either one of them in a flex position because of the bipocalypse, I'm going NWI.
Okay.
I'm going consistency over boom or bust.
Oh, we forgot to bring it up because it's when we talk about the horrible Jacksonville side. So Trevor Lawrence has been placed on IR.
Yeah.
So that'll be Mac Jones playing, who's not an awful backup, but
No, and sorry, I will say this. After Lawrence went down, and that was a brutal hit last week. After Lawrence went down, Jones looked a little scruffy in the beginning, but they did turn it up. So they did have a decent fantasy week after. Obviously, Washington was a massive element to that with his fantasy day. But if there's anybody on that roster, and I mean, I'll let you guys, discuss this as well, and but I think the only fantasy relevant player to start this week again is Ingram.
I agree with you. You agree with that, Anthony?
I agree with that, and I want to stir the pot here to Tommy's point earlier with his flex option between NWI and Calvin Ridley. I'm actually going to go opposite. I'm going to start Calvin Ridley in my flex this week. I look at it as a revenge game for him, coming from the Jaguars.
That's true.
Despite he's been inconsistent. Tommy's right. He's definitely been inconsistent, especially the last 3 weeks. I think twice he had single-digit points for fantasy relevance, but he's still Will Levis's first read 29% of the time in these last 4 weeks, especially. So he's still getting a good first read rate. The targets are there, and the Jaguars' defense has allowed the second most fantasy points per game to the perimeter this season, including the most receiving yards allowed per contest. That bodes well for Calvin Ridley. So I could easily see this being a good revenge game for him, and this is one of those weeks that Tommy was talking about where he could put up 25 plus points.
Sorry, Tommy. I just wanted to. It's really important. So, like we said, the only guy that we're playing on the Jacksonville side, we kind of glossed over Brian Thomas. I think he just falls in the category of just you're playing him and we didn't think about it. But in terms of guys that might have been questionable, Brian Thomas, who's still the wide receiver 12, still had a really nice game against the game that they had against Houston. I think you just, hold your breath and hope that Mac Jones is like Tommy said, he's going to be okay. So I think that's two important names, Brian Thomas and Evan Ingram. Sorry, Tommy, go ahead.
If you were forced to start a running back in Jacksonville this week, who do you feel comfortable with more? Do you feel comfortable with more Bigsby or ETN? Because if it was me, I'd probably go Bigsby, because if they're going to win this game or control this game, they're going to win this game on the ground. And Bigsby is that hard-nosed runner that can actually control a game, and we've seen that this year.
But do you think that they're going to do that?
I don't think the Tennessee Titans are that good either. So who knows? It could just be a bloodbath on the ground. It could be it's not going to be a defensive struggle. I think it's just going to be, a kind of contained game. It could be a ground and pound game where Bigsby and Pollard both have, 20 plus touches for 65 plus yards and maybe a touchdown.
Mr. Perez, would you rather play ETN, Bigsby, or Sincere McCormick?
Well, if the injuries hold true to the Raiders and they stay the way that they are right now, probably Sincere McCormick.
Well, all right, let's put it this way. If one of them comes back, it's Abdullah, Sincere, and Madison.
I want to say it's still Sincere.
Are you sincere about that?
I'm being sincere about that, yeah. I think he's definitely earning that more opportunity.
That's going to be the label of this one. That's going to be the label.
We're going to lose viewership.
No,
I don't, Anthony. The sentiment of that I agree with you with. Tommy, I would try anything not to play either one of these backs.
Yeah.
I can't see how Jacksonville wins this game. They're going to be trying to compete they're only going to be trying so hard, how hard that they're going to push it. And the Titans are still halfway fighting in there. They're trying to see what they got out of Levis. They're going to try to run the score if they can. I mean, I can't see that going in any
I'm not sleeping well if I'm starting any of them. I think it's a good perspective because there are people that have ETN, Bigsby, and potentially a Sincere McCormick or somebody in that caliber, to say, all right, listen, I need an RB2 because Derek or RB1, let's just put it that way, or because you got You got some pretty good running backs that are out this week. Some
Right.
people have a Derrick Henry and also a Brian Robinson on their roster, and now they're in tough positions. So you might be forced to have to make those hard decisions right there. And I think, I would lean towards Bigsby over all of them, but I would not be comfortable not sleeping well at night for that one.
I think you can throw in Levis as a streamer option. We were looking at the stats when we did the waiver show. He's the quintessential streamer. I mean, he's going to get you
Yeah. Jaguars
enough yards and enough touchdowns. And yeah, I mean, the matchups obviously this week against Jacksonville and coming up. I mean, he's not a bad option.
Yeah,
I mean,
I would probably start. I'd probably start Bryce Young over him, but
well, maybe not this week. I mean, well, we'll get. You know what? Why don't we parlay into that there? So we've got the Carolina Panthers at the Philadelphia Eagles. The line there is 12.5 points for Philadelphia. The over-under is
too big.
45.5 points. Now, that gives the implied point total Carolina 16.5, Philadelphia 29. Now, Tommy, I know that you're very big on Carolina making it a much more competitive game.
Yep.
I am 50-50 on that. I don't exactly see it exactly like that. Although it's hard for me to imagine they only end up with 16 or 17 points.
I mean,
go ahead.
The past 4 weeks. I mean, so week 8 was the last time that they were blown out by double digit points. And we'll talk a little bit about this a little bit more down the road during this video. But basically, the Saints were the last. So the game between the Saints, Giants, Chiefs, and Buccaneers, which I'd probably say 3 out of 4 of those names right there. The Giants being outside of that. Are higher profiled offenses putting up points. They lost by less than 9.5 points.
These are fair. This is fair point.
So especially the game with the Chiefs and also the game with the Buccaneers. I mean those were down to the wire last minute games. So I think recently the Carolina Panthers have been clicking as a team. I think that they have a good passing flow now. They have some decent players like Legacy, Adam Thielen, making some great plays, and bringing some charismatic to that offense. They have some good running backs back there. They just got Jonathan Brooks back. They got Chuba Hubbard, Mr. Billionaire back there now. So I think they have something going. And yes, are they going against the Philadelphia Eagles, who is super high profile? Great running backs, great receiving core. Dallas Goedert is a game time decision. He's probably not playing. They were even talking about putting him on IR. And I'm not sure if you saw that, but they're thinking about putting Goddard on IR. If for some reason they decide that Devonta Smith is going to have another sit because they're playing against the Carolina Panthers this week and they're in control of that division, this is a closer game than you think. Both defenses have been playing pretty good. So and with Bryce Young, he's been playing good himself. So I think that this game is going to be closer than the spread shows.
Well, if what you're saying holds true, then it kind of raises up a lot of the fantasy options, especially on the Panther side. Normally speaking, if it was kind of old school Carolina, we would say, hey, Chuba Hubbard and forget everybody else. But it does make guys like Leggett or Thielen pretty good options.
I'm starting Thielen this week. If I have him, I'm starting him. Especially with this apocalypse, I'm starting him this week.
How do you feel about the Panthers situation there, Mr. Perez?
Well, if I have Chuba Hubbard, I'm probably
you're playing him. Yeah, I mean,
I was gonna say if you have a better option, sit him. I don't like the match.
Are you starting Sincere McCormick over Chuba Hubbard?
We're not going there.
Too far.
I'm saying depending on your if you obviously he's one of your starting running backs, you have to play him, but he's coming off one of his worst stat lines of the season this past week against Tampa Bay. But Tampa Bay is really good stopping the run. But what's worrisome is that Hubbard only had 12 carries. Brooks had 9 carries. You see, so if you're a Chuba Hubbard over without Jonathan Brooks, you're going to have to start tempering your expectations.
This is
Philadelphia
fair.
also Philadelphia.
And they're also gonna want to see what they got out of
Yeah, of
him for the
course,
rest of the year. I mean,
and I know people are saying, "Oh, Hubbard's going to be still the main guy," and I think he's still the main guy. But you can see it was almost a 50-50 split this past week, and I think that's going to be the case continuing going forward. And just the Eagles' defense they also have a good run defense this week, so
yep.
I wouldn't be surprised if Hubbard has another bad week.
I think I agree with you, and also I agree with Tommy's perspective of, I mean, if you want to take your shot on Mr. Legacy, Adam Thielen, go for it. I think Leggett is a better option if you need to. And again, we're suggesting that the Panthers are going to be a bit more competitive. Bryce, to me, I don't even think you think about it. I think you don't even attempt to flip that coin against the Eagles. But on the Eagles side, it's a bit more straightforward. Jalen Hurts, you're playing him. Saquon Barkley, you're playing him. A.J. Brown, you're playing him. Devonta Smith, if he's in, you're playing him. To Tommy's point, if Dallas Goedert is out, you could even take a look at the backup. I forget the guy's name. Is it not the not oh my gosh, I'm going to forget the name. Well, Tommy will check the name out. He's definitely an option to take a look at as well. And obviously, the Eagles' defense, they're one of the top-rated defenses this week. Even if the Panthers are competitive, they're definitely looking at a turnover or two.
Grant Calcaterra.
Calcaterra is the guy with the Italian name.
They also got CJ Uzoma over there now too. Uzama.
But I think
Calcaterra is talented.
Yeah.
So let's move on. Next game, we've got the Atlanta Falcons at the Minnesota Vikings. Minnesota's the favorite there, 5.5 points. The over-under there is 46.5 points. I think this is going to be a great game, and we'll talk a little bit more about that a little bit later.
I'm not talking fireworks. I'm not talking fireworks this week. I hope fireworks, but I'm not talking fireworks this week.
Okay. So I think Aaron Jones, you're playing him. Justin Jefferson, you're playing him. TJ Hawkinson, you're playing him. On the Falcons side, Bijan, let's go. Drake London, let's go. Some of the guys in the probably category, I think Darnell Mooney. If you've been rolling with him thus far and you're looking to make some, you're looking for a more boomer busty. Yeah, go ahead.
I think he's a valuable player. I don't think he's boomer bust. I think he still has a valuable role every single week. His targets show it. I think it's just the numbers, fantasy relevant numbers, haven't been as consistent as they were for rolling beginning of the year weeks. I think up to like week 9 is where after that he kind of like leveled out a little bit. It just depends on Kirk Cousins. And, Kirk going back to Minnesota,
right.
It's I won't say it's a revenge game because Kirk, wherever he goes, he makes some big bucks. So I don't think he has revenge on anybody. I think he's just going to go there and just play some ball. So I think it's going to be a nice day for Mooney and London. And I think you're going to see some sort of a bounce back week for Kyle Pitts. I would hope so, because Kyle Pitts has been absolutely disgusting.
Hard disagree about Pitts. I think Addison.
I'm hoping.
Addison, though, I know in general I'm a bit higher on Addison than Tommy is. I think he's pretty hovering on the must-start category, especially as of late. While Jefferson gets all the attention that he has, but I know Tommy and I have gone back and forth on Addison. So Captain Kirk, I mean, he had about as bad a game as you can imagine last week. I think this is a turnaround week for them. I don't know if that means you're starting Kirk over, guys that we love like Jameis or anything, but I think maybe he brings up the Falcons a little bit. And Sam Darnold, I mean, we've got some hit and miss here. I know he's done it for fantasy. He's kept it going. You roll him out again, or are you cautious?
I actually roll him out. I think he's got a good matchup against the Falcons this week. I'd feel confident playing him in spot start if I have my quarterbacks on a bye this week.
Yeah, I mean, I'd put it this way: if I have Darnold or Kirk, I'm starting Darnold over Kirk this week.
Sure, I agree with that.
But let me see here. I'll rattle out some stats for you for Darnold.
Yeah.
He's got 19 plus points in his last 2 matchups, even though they were against the Bears and the Cardinals. The Falcons defense has given up the eighth most fantasy points per game to quarterbacks so far. and 6 quarterbacks have beaten them for more than 18 points, including 4 since week 7. So Darnold is a start this week. If you need him, play him.
Well, I don't want to. I don't want to bury the lead because we have a nice little segment at the end. So I have some, but I'll spoil it slightly to be like I'm pretty high on the Falcons this week, but we'll get to that.
I will say this real quick,
later.
though, as an Aaron Jones owner, yes, he's my RB1, so I have to play him, but I'm very skeptical about playing him this week, just because the Falcons' run defense is very good. They've allowed 1 touchdown to running backs since week 11.
Yeah, it's a tough matchup for him.
And Jones has been very underwhelming this year, and
he has been catching the ball in the backfield though. So
yeah, and I don't know. I feel like a lot of it. Last 2 weeks he's had 4 fumbles, so he's had some fumble issues now.
Yeah,
and just the overall game script for him hasn't been the greatest. But I'm on the fence about playing him if I have better options. I don't. But just be wary that it's a tough matchup for him.
It's amazing you're so cautious. I see Jones as such a must start, but
I don't. I mean, I have no choice, so I have to. And if you have him on your team, you have to because you had drafted him as a high running back. But
I don't think you're benching him this week, especially with the buys. Even if you have a full roster and you saved your week 14 buys and you don't have anybody on a buy this week, I think you're still starting him.
I'm just hoping he can get me at least 10 points.
You think he's going to produce more than Sincere McCormick?
I think Jones should produce more than Sincere McCormick realistically, but it's hard because like I said, I've talked about this before in previous shows. I don't understand what the Minnesota offense does when they get to the goal line. I mean, they throw the ball all 3 downs. They rarely give the ball to Aaron Jones on the goal line.
Which is fantastic.
Yeah, for people that have Sam Darnold, but
we've talked about this. It's the Kevin McCarthy special.
Yeah, it's frustrating. It's very frustrating
but you've seen plenty of times where Aaron Jones has caught the ball in the backfield on the 1 yard line like that. So I mean, I think he benefits from it as well. I think we're overthinking this. I think he is a must start. Yep. Don't and sleep comfortably with that start.
Let's move on to a more disgusting game. We have the New York Wonderful Jets away at the Miami Dolphins. Miami there is the favorites by 6.5 points. The over-under.
I think this is going to be a good game.
It's hard for us to watch it. Trust me.
I know it's hard for you to watch, but I think NFL-wise, fantasy-wise, I think this is going to be a really high-profile game. I think the sun's out. Everywhere else, it's gloomy and cold and below 20 degrees, and in Miami, they're going to be throwing that ball.
Well, the over/under there is 44.5 points. That doesn't leave the Jets with too many points. The implied points total for the Jets there is 19 points. So a lot of the guys here, a couple guys right in the easy category. Devon Achane, you're playing him.
Yep.
Tyreek Hill, you're playing him. Jonnu Smith, you're playing him.
Jalen
Waddle, really?
Yep.
No issues with that?
All 4, you're playing them.
Yeah.
All 5. Tua, Achane, Tyreek, Waddle,
and Tua.
All starting.
Okay. You start Waddle with complete confidence?
Yes.
I think I'm with you, Anthony. Slightly cautious on that.
No. Start him.
Who would you play? NWI or Waddle?
NWI in this position over Waddle.
This is a tough one.
Bring out the questions, man.
I think the quarterback play will. I mean, I think they're both really good options. But if I was tossed between the two of them, I would go NWI because of the touchdown perspective. But if you're looking for, it depends on what you're looking for. If you're looking for consistency and you're looking for security, go NWI. If you're looking for, all right, I can get maybe 8 points minimum out of Waddle, but I could get 27 points on from Waddle because he has a big explosive play for a touchdown. That's the guy I might want to start. So it just depends on what you're looking for. Personally, I'd go NWI, but if I was, because this is a 4 o'clock game or this is a 1 o'clock game?
1 o'clock.
Yeah, I mean, if this was a Thursday game, I'd go NWI all day, no questions about it. But It just depends on what you're looking for at that point in time on how your roster's perspective right there. If you need a boom play, go Waddle. If you need a conservative play, go NWI.
I will say that I still think, as bad as the Jets are, I do think that they still have a really good pass defense. Um, and they've allowed, actually, the Jets' pass defense has allowed the fewest fantasy points per game to both perimeter receivers and wideouts in general.
You should check that stat, like maybe the last 5 weeks or so. They've gotten worse there, maybe on the season, because the first half of the season was so good with that.
Just real quick, sorry. And I know we're talking acronyms right there, NWI, and for some people that are just tuning into this first.
This is fair.
Yeah, NWI is Nick Westbrook-Akine on the Tennessee Titans. He's a wide receiver over there, has been astronomically incredible, catching every pass for a touchdown almost. So that's who we're talking about right there.
On the New York Jets side, and I'll be curious to ask Anthony what he thinks here. I think Garrett Wilson, you're playing him. I mean, despite some bad weeks in a row here that have happened, I feel like you just roll him out. You take the lumps as they come. You playing Devontae?
I know it's tough to sit him with 6 teams on a bye, but I don't know. The Dolphins' defense is pretty good. They allow an average of 81 receiving yards per contest and 3 touchdowns. But like I said, if you have him as a starting receiver, you're going to play him. If he was drafted him as a number 1 or 2, I'm playing him.
This is fair.
Well, who will be covering Devontae? The Miami Dolphins, they run zone or they run man?
You talking about the Jalen Ramsey business?
Yeah. Is Ramsey going to be? It depends. I mean, if Ramsey's on Devontae, because we've seen this plenty of times with Devontae when him and Aaron Rodgers were on the Packers going against the Rams, and Jalen Ramsey was there. Devontae made Jalen Ramsey look like a punk at times. So,
yeah, it's not the receivers I don't trust, Wilson or Adams. I think they're obviously phenomenal. It's Aaron Rodgers I don't trust. I don't see him playing at a consistent level, which makes it harder for the receivers to shine. And that's why I'm being cautious about this. It's not so much. I think that Adams and Wilson can both get the job done against Miami. The question is, can Aaron Rodgers get the job done? I don't see that happening.
Well, Rodgers got a Netflix documentary coming out, and he's got to bring some followers to that. So I think that this boy's got to play this week.
Hard-hitting fantasy analysis by Mr. Netflix over here.
No, but to your point, Billy, if Netflix. You have him and
right.
They're your 1 or 2 receivers, you play them. But I would just with Adams, I'd proceed with caution. That's all.
I think Wilson has a little bit of a bounce back, but I agree. I agree with what you're saying.
Aaron Rodgers, I got you, bro.
All right, and so Mr. Lang, is the Breece Hall owner. How do you feel about the Breece Hall might not play situation here?
I mean, if he doesn't play, I'm starting Allen.
With confidence?
Yeah. I mean, yeah, 100%.
Otherwise, if he plays, just roll with Breece Hall then?
Yeah, I mean, it's another bye week, so you can't bench this guy. And then we're not talking about draft capital anymore, but like production element. He's definitely going to be a better option than whoever else you have on your bench. So you have to feel safe and start him. I know that he didn't have a great week last week, and he hasn't. But you still have to play him. He got you where you are. Whether it's good or bad. I would say a lot of people that drafted him most likely had a good draft after that to make sure that they had the capital behind that. So you're still playing him.
Let's move away.
I will say real quick, in the next coming weeks, maybe in the next week or so, don't be surprised if you see Bryce Hall end up on the IR. And maybe they shut him down the rest of the year. I mean,
that's fine.
That's what I was getting at,
Allen,
Anthony.
though.
It's not in their interest to push that, especially if it's iffy with an injury.
They're playing for what draft position now at this point.
Right.
Protect your asset. I strongly believe that, and I'm going to continue to ride that train. I said it last week where I wouldn't be surprised if they shut him down, for the next couple of weeks, and I still can see that actually happening.
Let's move to a better game. Supposedly.
It's
So
not a
we've
better
got
game.
so we've got the New Orleans Saints at the New York Giants. The Saints are road favorites, 4.5 points. The over-under there is 40.5 points. That does not leave a lot of points for the New York Giants. Implied points total there for the Giants, 18 points. I actually would call the Saints the number one defense this week, considering how bad the Giants offense has been looking. And this is just another week of the Saints offense is going to be pretty easy to call out here. Alvin Kamara, let's go. MVS, I don't know how you sit him. Let's roll. Fire up the band. With the Taysom injury, I guess you could take your shot on Juwan Anthony. Tommy and I had a whole discussion on the fact of with Taysom's injury, Juwan Johnson seems to be and he also finished as the number one tight end a few times last year. He's a great option as a fill-in. However, if you were to go on fantasy Twitter, you would find that people would call us names for suggesting that the island of Foster Moreau, how dare us not mention that he's going to be the number one tight end for this situation. I think that's hobbycock, whatever you want to call it. How do you feel about that?
I like Juwan Johnson way better than Foster Moreau. Like you said last year, he's benefited the most. And he was one of those guys last year, was super sneaky tight end, where he had a bunch of number one tight end performances in a few weeks that kind of just came out of nowhere because of injuries to Taysom Hill and some other wide receivers that they had. I like Juwan Johnson better than Foster. Derek Carr trusts Juwan Johnson. He'd be the one that I'd pick up over Foster.
Now, remember, and we said this yesterday, Foster Moreau did play with Derek Carr in Las Vegas or Oakland, whatever it was at that time. I think they have some sort of connection, but I think that, value-wise, I think Juwan Johnson is more of a athletic, kind of like Njoku style of a player, and he's going to be a red zone target. I can guarantee. I almost can guarantee. I'm like 98% sure that he'll score a touchdown this week. Juwan Johnson.
I couldn't agree more, and I actually in our little segment that we did in the waivers, I was actually pretty high on Carr. I think Carr is a decent streaming option himself, especially with the Taysom injury. You're not going to have to worry about Taysom vulturing quarterback snaps or weird wildcat stuff. I think Carr could be pretty decent.
Yeah.
On the Giants side, I think you start Tyrone Tracy, you start Malik Neighbors, and you check out.
That's it.
Okay.
No mas.
No Wandale shots there.
No Wandale for you, Tommy?
No. Doesn't matter the situation, who's throwing the ball. I'm not starting Wandale. It's
no shots on Theo.
No. Tyrone Tracy. He has to break. He has to break a long run to actually be fantasy relevant this week. So I'm just not sure.
You wouldn't even play Tracy.
Think so?
I don't know. It
Okay,
depends on what I got. Throw me some options. Like say if it's a flex position or RB2 position, you give me three guys, and I'll if it's RB2 and a flex.
Tyrone Tracy or Garendo.
I think I would start Garendo, but I think Tyrone Tracy is a viable number 2 fantasy running back this week. I mean, he's going against the Saints, who don't have a great rush defense. Running defense, sorry, and they've been real generous to runners. They allow 16 plus points to fantasy running backs since week 7, which is a pretty good statistic for a running back. So I think you could start Tracy with confidence this week as your RB2.
Yeah, and like we said, other than Neighbors, maybe that's check out.
Yeah, other than that, I'm not playing anyone else. No way.
Let's move on to the next game. We've got Seattle Seahawks at the Arizona Cardinals. Arizona, they're the favorites, 2.5 points. The over-under is 44.5 points. We got a lot of players. Got a lot of players in this game too. Ken Walker, you're playing him. I mean, it wasn't. I mean, there's been some bad stuff there, but I feel like you just keep rolling them out. You're playing them. I know Tom has some strong feelings about the Seattle wide receiver core. You want to take it, Tom?
Yeah, it's just DK Metcalf. He can't stay on the field, so I'm not starting him.
You're not starting DK
No,
Metcalf.
I traded him away early in mid season because I didn't like him as a wide receiver one. So yeah, if you got something better, yeah, you can. I would bench him this week. Now that could shoot you in the butt.
So disagree with you. I disagree with this.
Well, give me an option. So if I'm,
you don't sit Metcalf. I mean,
No,
yeah,
I would
got
start.
it. It wasn't a good game.
I would start if I had Lad McConkey and DK Metcalf, I would start Lad McConkey.
But Lad McConkey's been a top 15 wide receiver basically every week.
But
so,
DK Metcalf is your kind of like your staple receiver on your roster most likely. He could be your wide receiver 1 or wide receiver 2.
Right.
I'd start Lad McConkey over him.
But I think everybody that's an easy. I
know it's
one.
an easy. All right, so they give me another one.
I mean,
I'd start T Higgins over Metcalf.
NWI.
I'd start NWI over Metcalf.
MVS.
Yeah.
Okay. That's how little confidence you have.
Metcalf hasn't done anything. He has not done anything.
So concordantly, you have no issue starting JSN then. By the way, for anybody who doesn't know, we were throwing out lots of acronyms.
I actually like Jackson Smith in this game because last time they played the Cardinals, he put up almost 20 fantasy points. The Cardinals really struggle with slot receivers, which is what JSN plays out of. I'd actually play him with confidence this week.
Listen. The past 5 weeks, DK Metcalf is number 67. He has 23 targets for 15 receptions. He has 0 touchdowns. Why would you start a player? I know he's 98.2% owned, but like if you need a win this week, why are you rolling with that guy when you have other viable options potentially on your roster? Start those guys that have been producing. Put them in your roster spot, especially on a week like this where you need to start somebody to get you that win.
This is a fair point, but it's kind of why we're having the discussion so that people can listen to your thought process behind it. We're allowed to disagree. My opinion on it is he's the number 1 wide receiver on an offense that passes a lot. If his health notwithstanding, because that's a whole other issue, but his health notwithstanding, I feel like it's almost impossible to sit a guy like him.
DeAndre Hopkins, he's number 14. He has 33 targets for 24 receptions and three touchdowns. I mean, you're talking about the same caliber.
Yeah, these are fair points. People could take of it.
And there was a point where DeAndre Hopkins was a waiver wire pickup, right? So
well, before he was traded.
Yeah, before he was traded. But Nick Westbrook-Akine is number 9 in the past 5 weeks.
Right.
Again, it's touchdown dependent right there, but he's getting the touchdowns.
I would say it's just projecting forward. It's just difficult to. Again, people could take of it what they will.
Projecting forward, we're talking about this week. I would not start DK Metcalf.
I'll tell you this, though. The only thing that gives me pause is Arizona's defense has been real good. They were pretty close to beating the Vikings last week, too, and they basically shut them down until kind of close to the end of the game. And if you just look at the last couple of games, they've been great.
Couple weeks ago, I made some fair points on Arizona's defense, and I got poo-pooed on.
I don't think you got poo-pooed.
I got poo-pooed.
So let me ask you a question. Tommy. Before you traded Metcalf for Justin Jefferson, would you have benched Metcalf this week in your lineup?
Yes, I would have, and it wasn't just a 1-for-1.
Who would you have played over him though? Because Metcalf.
Am I going to pull up my roster right now?
But I'm just asking, like who in that role, because you drafted him to be your wide receiver 1, wide receiver 2. In your case, I think you drafted him to be wide receiver 1. Yeah. So who would you have started them in that place as a wide receiver 1?
He said T Higgins.
T Higgins?
Yeah, T Higgins.
For example, but
T Higgins.
You wouldn't start T Higgins and DK Metcalf?
No. If I needed a win this week, I would not start DK Metcalf.
Okay. People can make of it what they will. We have strong disagreements on Metcalf here. Geno Smith, I guess you could take your shot. They pass a lot. I'm personally, like I said, a bit afraid of the Arizona defense there. On the Arizona side, it's a little bit. I imagine this will be a little less contentious. You're playing James Conner, you're playing Marvin Harrison, and let's light the fires with Trey McBride. No questions there. Kyler, hit and miss. He has difficulty stringing together really great games in a row, but I feel like this is one where we're gonna say go with confidence. You guys disagree with that? Agree with that?
I wouldn't start Kyler this week.
Really?
Yeah, no. I mean, look what he did against the Seahawks a couple weeks ago. He put up a complete dud. I
That's
can't
true.
see that changing much. I think it was 2 weeks ago they played each other, so I
Maybe
can't
they
see
make
much
some
changing.
adjustments. They're home now. This is a fair point.
Maybe, but I after that showing, I would have a hard time starting him with confidence, considering the other options we gave you as far as streaming quarterback goes that you can start over him.
And just to piggyback off that, so I would start Darnell Mooney. This is talking about my roster right now. I would start Darnell Mooney and DeAndre Hopkins over DK Metcalf this week, and I'm starting all three of them. Higgins, Hopkins, and Mooney.
I mean, Higgins, I agree with. I don't disagree with that one.
Yeah,
because of a wide receiver one, I have a hard time not starting him.
Yeah.
You guys, I was gonna ask if you guys are as high on the Cardinals defense situation as I am.
Not this week. I think it's gonna be a kind of
Okay.
like a
You think it's
20
gonna? You think they hit the
high
over?
20. I think all games. Both teams will score in the high 20s.
Oh, so then they hit. You think they hit the over then?
I think they hit the over.
Okay. Let's move on. We've got the Chicago Bears at the San Francisco 49ers. San Francisco there is the favorites, 3.5 points, and the over-under is 44.5 points. Okay, so if you went ahead and you picked up Isaac Guerrero this week in the absence of Jordan Mason and Christian McCaffrey, I feel like you're rolling with him. If you picked him up, you're rolling with him. After that, I think you play Jawan Jennings on the San Francisco side, and I know Tommy is not a fan of Debo, although I know, Anthony, you brought it up, that I'm actually of the opinion that this whole situation about the running backs actually brings up Debo's value. They might use him in a, kind of a more, not wildcat, like he'll use him as a running back kind of position a little bit more often.
I think from our Tuesday video, my opinion has changed and slid just a little bit on Debo's side. I think that Debo's value, he obviously has been playing pretty horribly for the past couple weeks. He came out saying that he's not happy with his production. Based on the changes and the injuries on that roster, I think that his value does go up in the running game as well. So I think that he will have value moving forward. I'm not 100% comfortable with starting him, but this week with the buys, you might be forced to start him this week.
Would you play Debo or Metcalf?
Debo.
Okay, that's how low he is on my guy.
Yeah.
George Kittle, you're playing him. On the Bears side, Keenan Allen, let's go. I mean, it's a couple games in a row. He's a target machine. Let's go. DJ Moore, let's go. You play both of them. The running back situation, I don't know how you sit Swift. What do you guys think? That's it?
Yeah.
Yeah, you don't take. I guess you could maybe take your shot on Roshan. Maybe
Roshan again. He's touchdown dependent, so it's just that conversation that we've had a couple weeks ago when we talk about Roshan. Yes, is he a good talent? Yeah, but he's not getting the touches. He's getting valuable touches on the 1 or 2 yard line, but that's not happening a lot with the Chicago offense.
I will say this as far as fantasy relevance goes on the 49ers side. Do not be surprised to see Kyle Juszczyk vulture some touchdowns here.
Oh, 100%.
We talked about this. We were talking about they were going to bring in some running backs, and they really brought in some kind of real backup guys. I think it was the guy who used to be on the Jets. They brought him in,
but
like we were saying it on the waivers that Juszczyk 100% is going to get an increased role.
And he has a role. He has a role in the passing game too because he can catch the ball. I think if it's
they trust him in pass protection. Yeah,
I think if it's a goal line situation, you're looking at Juszczyk and Debo back there. That's who you're looking at back there. I think between the 20s, you're looking at Garindo getting the ball.
Quarterback situation. So Caleb Williams and Brock Purdy, I see them both as fairly decent options. I mean, there's better ones out there. How do you compare them against, say, Jordan Love, Anthony?
I'm probably going to go Jordan Love over Brock Purdy. I see that, like I said,
And
mentioned
Caleb.
earlier. I think Green Bay is going to throw the ball a lot. The Lions' pass defense isn't the greatest, and they have no pass rush right now. So I like that matchup a little bit better. Brock Purdy, I don't know. It was a snow game, so I can't cast too much judgment on him. You know what I mean? The game was a mess, and it was out of control and out of hand from the beginning. So I don't want to say, he looked bad or didn't look the same from his injury. But I will say for me, it'd be like a wait and see to see how he plays this week before I actually am confident in starting him again.
Gotcha. One name that we purposely mentioned off. I mean, we were firing up the band with Keenan Allen, firing up the band with DJ Moore. Roma Dunze, we purposely left off. Tommy and I spent some time this week saying that Roma Dunze was a drop candidate. Go ahead. I mean, there's too many mouths to feed. Keenan Allen and DJ Moore are too talented.
He's a drop candidate, but he's also a handcuff candidate for Keenan Allen.
That's fair. I mean, I guess if you can afford to keep that on your roster, otherwise, go ahead and drop it. Cole Kmet, I think is another benefit, and he's another beneficiary of the changed offense in the Chicago. Take your shot if you need a tight end. Definitely, you could do worse. Let's move it on. Next game, we've got the Buffalo Bills at the Los Angeles Rams. Buffalo is the favorites there, road favorites, 4.5 points. The over-under is 49.5 points. We're back to a bigger over-under game here. Lots of names, lots of big guys going to be getting you a lot of fantasy points. Josh Allen, you're playing him. James Cook, you're playing him. Kyron Williams, you're playing him. Puka, Cooper, you're playing them both for the Rams. On the Bills side, the wide receivers, good luck. That's how I felt for however many weeks in a row here. I don't know what to make of it. I got 5 names listed here. Any one of them could catch a touchdown. Any one of them could have 8 catches for 200 yards. How do you guys see that playing out?
I'm staying away. I mean, Shakir is the only one that I think has value when 2 or more of those guys play. If it's just Shakir and one of those guys, Shakir is going to get heavily, defended. So I think the targets is where it's at when it comes down to it. Obviously, Coleman is a value play when he plays, but Shakir is probably the one that I would lean towards if needed to have to play this week.
No love for Hollins walking in barefoot, catching a touchdown.
One with the earth. No, it's kind of a shame because Amari Cooper. I think a lot of people had high hopes for when he got traded to Buffalo.
And they're saving him for the playoffs.
People thought this guy would have some serious fantasy relevance, and I thought the same thing too. He went from Deshaun Watson in Cleveland, who he was putting up some numbers, and now going to Josh Allen and being the clear number 1 in Buffalo, and that just hasn't been the case at all. The last 3 weeks, he's failed to score more than 7 fantasy points, and he's only had 3 targets in that. 3 targets each game in that span. To me, how do you start a guy like that?
You can't.
Who's supposed to be the clear number 1 on a team and is getting 3 targets per game? You can't. Like Tommy said.
So that is one player I would start DK over. DK would start over.
I'm actually going to be forced into starting Amari Cooper in 2 leagues.
Oh, that's a problem.
Just via wide receiver buys and such, and I'm not happy about it. Not happy about it, Bob. Yeah.
Good luck.
I mean, do we think that he can maybe score a touchdown this week? It's possible. I would say anything's possible. You know what I mean? It's just.
I mean, he could toss a touchdown to Josh Allen or something.
Yeah, I mean, listen, do that. Josh Allen's the only man to throw and have a throwing and receiving touchdown on the same play.
And he didn't get points for that because it was a backwards pass.
I thought he did get points for that.
Josh Allen did, not Amari Cooper.
Josh Allen
Amari
did,
Cooper.
Yeah.
Amari Cooper got the catch but then he
Yeah,
passed.
but Josh Allen got the
but then he
passing
passed
and
the ball. Yeah.
receiving
He got the
touchdown.
Anthony knows because
It was a
he was
14-point play.
because he was playing. He was playing
Yeah.
me, and I had
was like-
Josh Allen.
I looked at the score. I'm like, wait, what the heck? Because I saw the statistics, right, for the number of touchdowns. So I'm like, wait, he had a receiving. I was like, when the heck did he get a receiving touchdown? I fell asleep, so I didn't watch the end of the game. But I saw the play. I'm like, are you kidding? They gave him credit for that?
Do you know that,
I'm like,
Anthony?
that's
Do you know that?
crazy.
Do you know that if you like, and this is on Sleeper, you know, if you go on Sleeper, it like, and sometimes I think it's overdone, but they look at the percentages about who's going to win.
Yeah.
We were like 50-50. And then in that one play, it went to like 80% or
Oh
something.
no, I knew I had no shot of winning, but
Right.
it was funny to see his stat line because I'm like, when did he get a receiving touchdown?
I know. It was so ridiculous.
Josh Allen does it all.
On the tight end situation, we spent a little time talking about this. If Kincaid's out, I guess maybe you could take a shot on Knox, but I would actually just try to stay away completely. If Kincaid is in, I would personally still try to stay away from it. I've actually been fairly critical of Kincaid throughout the year that he's not getting enough targets. Tommy's a little bit more bullish than I am on the situation.
I think it's a good matchup for him to turn it back up. You know, they're leaning towards the end of the season, the NFL season, so I think they need to get the guy rolling for the playoffs.
Well, we'll see and again, even if he plays, if he doesn't, obviously,
Yeah,
I think he almost falls in line with the same statistic as Amari Cooper, though. To be honest with you,
and just all these pass catchers.
Yeah, it's just it's like the carousel on Green Bay. You just don't know who's going to get the ball, and they don't care about who gets the ball. They care about winning. You know that's the bottom line.
Right.
Whatever it takes to win, that's what they're going to do.
you play to win the game.
So we got Sunday Night Football here. The LA Chargers at the Kansas City Chiefs. Kansas City's the favorites, 3.5 points. The over-under there is 42.5 points. So definitely some conversations to have here. So let's note a few important little NFL notes. So Ladd McConkey is going to be a game time decision. And this is a Sunday Night Football game. So if you're going to try to risk it and wait and see if Ladd plays, then definitely have some kind of a backup, maybe somebody from the Monday night game or possibly Josh Palmer as a quote unquote wide receiver handcuff for Ladd McConkey. Otherwise, if he plays, you're playing him. There's no questions asked. After that, I think that some of these guys who might have otherwise been must plays are now a bit more questionable. Justin Herbert, I guess. I mean, he's been so great and, you know, some good stuff. I mean, how do you see the Chargers going here, Tommy?
It just depends on the receiving core. If Ladd doesn't play, these are bright lights again for Mr. Quentin Johnson. It doesn't
even start.
And it doesn't sound like he does well with the bright lights. He had 5 targets, 0 catches against Baltimore. And I think there was another game this year. Was it against Kansas City? I think that was the Thursday Night Football game against Kansas City the first time. Right? I think I'm correct with that.
We'll check it.
Yeah. If we could just check that. But he had 5 receptions, 5 targets, 1 reception. Those were his weakest games of the season outside of last week against Atlanta. If it's the bright lights, you got to stay away from him. But I do think that, Joshua Palmer and, Mr. Will Disley over there are going to have to step it up and catch some balls. And I think they're going to be gunslinging it this week against Kansas City.
I agree with that. If Ladd's out, I think Disley becomes a must play.
Because I don't think that Edwards and Vidal are anywhere close to what the caliber of running back that Dobbins has been playing at. With the catches in the backfield, they lost so much from losing Dobbins on that offense. They have a really good offensive line, so they're getting good pass protection. But that's somebody's got to step it up over there. Joshua Palmer steps up here and there. He's streaky, but Quentin Johnson really needs to catch those balls, those targets that are going to him.
So you brought up a name earlier. Would you you're being cautious on Gus Edwards? Would you play Tyrone Tracy over Gus Edwards?
Yeah. Yep.
Okay. Okay. Because you were cautious on Tracy. Okay.
Yeah. I mean, I think right now, Edwards is still, a play. He's not an ad drop or waiver anymore. He should be on teams. But I think Tyrone Tracy has more elusiveness and more get up than Edwards does right now.
On the Kansas City side, you're playing Kelsey, you're playing Hopkins. I think that you sit both running backs. How do you feel about that, Anthony?
I 100% agree with you, Billy. I just I don't like the matchup against the Chargers. I think they allow the six fewest points to fantasy running backs this year, and now with the split, which we knew was going to happen. It was nice to see Kareem Hunt start the game last week. That was promising for Kareem Hunt
He
owners,
didn't
but
look good though.
none of them did, though. None of
Yeah.
them did. It was a bad game for both of them, and I think it's going to be the same thing this week. It's going to be a bad game for both of them this week. I think if you have better options, you start those options. Myself, I'd probably start Sincere over Hunt this week. I'm going to leave.
I would too.
I would. I'm probably going to try to leave Hunt on my bench at all costs. Same for Pacheco. I think I have to see more out of him in order to fully trust him to be a viable starter. And they could, like we talked about this last week, where they could just be easing him back in and letting him run loose in the playoffs. There's no point to really give him a full workload now. They're already in the playoffs. Save it and then take it from there.
Well, then I got a question. So if you have Pacheco and you have Swift, do you play Swift or do you play Pacheco this week?
This week I'm playing Swift over Pacheco. I don't like that matchup against the Chargers.
Okay.
I agree with Anthony. You try to sit them at all costs. I mean, it's just they both vulture so much of each other's work on top of the fact that they're playing a great defense. I mean,
I think one of them has to benefit from a running aspect of this game though. So if there was one to lean on and you got both of those guys, I would lean on Pacheco than I would Hunt this week.
So both of the quarterbacks here, so they're definitely in the category of, hey, they've been playing pretty well as of late, especially when earlier in the season they were not so good for your team. So it's a difficult game for both of them because both are going against some good defenses. Obviously, Patrick Mahomes is amazing. It's Patrick Mahomes, but they do what they need him to do. I think that they're leaning on him a lot more, but I see him as a lower tier quarterback one this week. And I see Justin Herbert the exact same way. Who would you rather play, Herbert or Mahomes?
I'd probably take Mahomes in this situation just because he has more weapons available to him than what Herbert does right now, given the injuries. I'd probably go with Mahomes.
Yeah, I'd probably lean the same way too. I'm a Herbert lover right there, but I don't know. I mean, I think Mahomes has the better play this week with the talent he has around him. Let's put it this way. So if you have both of those guys and you're not 100% confident and you're like, hey, you know what? I'm going to go put a waiver wire pickup and go pick up or ad drop and I'm going to pick up Jameis Winston this week. Do you start Jameis Winston, Herbert, or Mahomes?
That's a great question.
That is a really good question.
It's right in the neighborhood of lower tier QB ones there.
I think I'm still going to go Mahomes in that situation.
I'm going Jameis.
I think I'm going to, if Ladd plays, I think I would go Herbert. So there we go. We got all three different answers.
Yeah.
I think if Ladd doesn't play, if it's just those two and Ladd doesn't play.
If Ladd doesn't play,
Mahomes is the better option there.
I think, man, I tell you what, Mahomes has got the higher floor, but if I need to go for a win, I would go Winston.
Yeah.
So.
And that's Sunday Night Football right there.
It's not a bad call. It's not a bad call.
That's Sunday Night Football right there, but then you got to make that decision at 1:00 for Jameis.
Right. Any other options on Kansas City here that you're thinking of? I know, Tommy, we talked about the Noah Gray situation. I wouldn't be comfortable starting him, but I know we talked about the quote-unquote tight end handcuff thing.
Yeah, I mean, handcuffing is one thing, but last week, he still got his targets. He still got his looks. Football-wise, he looked good. But he didn't produce in the statistical element of it. So
last week it was the beneficiary was Justin Watson.
Yeah. So it's just, yeah. I would ease out a little bit. I wouldn't start him if you're gonna, if you're looking at anything starting wise, I'd probably start him in a DFS element, but because he'd be cheap. But I would stay away from starting him in your fantasy football yearly roster this week.
Let's move on to Monday Night Football. Cincinnati Bengals at the Dallas Cowboys. Cincinnati are road favorites, 5.5 points. The over-under there is 49.5 points. This is going to be another game with lots of fantasy-relevant people. Joe Burrow, you're playing him. Chase Brown, you're playing him. Jamar Chase, you're playing him. CeeDee Lamb, if he's playing, obviously you're playing him. If not, we got some Brandon Cooks action. I feel like you could throw him in, especially with how awful the Cincinnati Bengals defense has been.
I gotta be honest. I think if CD doesn't play, I think this is a closer game. I think if CD plays, he's gonna be hyper targeted, and it's gonna weaken the Dallas's offense.
That's a really interesting take. That's counterintuitive.
Yep.
Yeah. Well, we'll find. I do think they hit this line though. The over either way.
Yeah.
So we'll get Tommy's reaction on this. So Rico Suave, I don't see how you sit him, you play him. We all agree?
Yeah, I guess.
Yeah, he's got a good matchup. I agree.
Yay.
Congratulations, Billy.
Yes. I mean, he's the only back there. He's doing well, he's having better games. Let's go. On some of the other options here. So,
well, I will say we might be talking about Rico Suave next week and moving forward into the playoffs if you're, kind of teetering on playing him because of certain matchups and this and that, and you have better options to play. You might be benching him for the next couple of weeks if you want to win.
Ooh, we'll get to that. So the Ferguson situation. So I believe Ferguson is back this week. If that's the case, and I love how it's like never confirmed, but it's pretty much going to happen based on all the other reporting. Go ahead, put him right into your lineup. Otherwise, kick him to the curb. You could roll with Schoonmaker again, who's been well in his absence. And then I guess take your shot if you need it on guys like Higgins. I know Tommy's going to be starting Higgins over DK Metcalf.
Yep.
Otherwise, maybe take your shot on him. Tommy knows I'm not a fan of TJ of Higgins at all.
That's fine.
Higgins.
He's an anytime touchdown right there.
I think Chase Brown has the potential to be the number one running back this week in fantasy against his matchup against the Cowboys. He scored.
I agree with you.
19 or more points in 4 straight games, and I think he's going to go for 5 on Monday night, and I could easily see that happening. I think Jamar Chase has a feast of a game. My only concern with the Bengals wide receivers going into Monday night is that the Bengals are going to score so many points that they're not going to pass the ball anymore, and they're just going to revert to their run game to kill time.
I think you might be right.
Listen, I just don't see anyone on the Cowboys defense stopping Jamar Chase. I don't. And the way Burrow's throwing the ball right now, maybe my hopes are very high on him having a great game, but
let's be careful though. I mean, we said the same thing about Washington a couple weeks ago when they went in there and then completely laid an egg, and they managed to shut down McLaurin up until the last 20 seconds of the game.
But
I really
playing at an MVP level right now.
Yep.
I mean,
I really hope it's so. It's in one of my leagues, one seed versus 2 seed. We're tied up in a record, and whoever wins this week, takes number 1 seed, and the number 1, and he has basically the connection between Chase and Burrow, and I'm hoping that it's more of a Burrow and a Higgins connection than a Chase connection this week.
Right.
I'll cut my losses with
we
Burrow.
do our hard hitting fantasy analysis with ourselves in mind when we do these. All right, so that concludes the slate of games. I believe we have some interesting parlay betting action to talk about. Why don't you take it away, Tommy?
Yeah, so basically we decided, last couple of weeks we were talking, we were doing our own 3-leg parlays, but we thought maybe just adding our own little element to it where every single one of us, so the 3 of us basically create a 3-leg parlay and we each fill a leg. And it's kind of like the leg that we're going to fill is something that we really believe is going to hit. We're going to articulate our reasons why, and you guys could either bet them singularly by himself, or you can put them all together, parlay them up, and make some pretty nice opportunity profit off of it. Nothing's ever a guaranteed win, but I will say based on our breakdowns, we do believe that this parlay should hit. So my parlay, my first leg of the parlay is the Carolina Panthers plus 9.5. It's an alternate spread. I know we spoke about this earlier, but they've played the past 4 weeks. They have not lost more than double-digit points, and they played the past 4 weeks 3 prevalent offenses that do put up a significant amount of points. Bryce Young has been playing very well the past couple weeks, putting up points. They might go down by double digits, but then they make their way back. They climb themselves up the ladder, and they play some hard-nosed football for the rest of the game, which, they're creating some turnovers and making it very interesting to watch. They are going against the Eagles this week, which obviously is a higher profiled offense. But yet again, with some of the injuries, the offense, the team of the Carolina Panthers really uniting and coming together and playing well. First leg I got is plus 9.5 Carolina Panthers. Anthony, you're up.
Yeah, so my part of the parlay is an anytime touchdown with none other than Mr. T. Higgins. I liked his matchup a lot against the Cowboys. He's right now for anytime touchdown a plus 135 on DraftKings, like we talked about earlier. The Cowboys have given up a substantial amount of wide receiver touchdowns. They're ranked 32nd in the red zone with their defense, and they have a 76.9 touchdown rate. And when it comes to the red zone, we just talked about this game. There's going to be a lot of scoring going on, I think, on the Bengals side, and I think Higgins reaps the benefits of it.
Billy, you're up.
Yeah, so I'll point out two variations on it, but just to be efficient in my explanation. So I'm taking the Atlanta Falcons to cover or to beat their 5.5 point underdog spread against the Vikings. A lot of reasons for this. Let's just start on the Vikings side. So the last 5 games, the Vikings have been very underwhelming, especially considering how well their record would suggest that they are. They beat the Colts 21-13. They beat the Jaguars 12-7. They beat the Titans 23-13. Then you had the blow-up game, Vikings at the Bears, in which they still should have lost 30-27. And then this past week, 23-22. The point spread and the line indicates an implied score of 26-21. Of which I do not see the Vikings covering that. I don't even know necessarily if they get to that 26 number. Additionally, you have the whole narrative street of Kirk Cousins returning to Minnesota, and the Falcons have been bad the last couple of weeks. There's no way around it. But they just played a great team in Los Angeles, in which Kirk Cousins threw 4 interceptions and looked awful, and they still barely lost that game. I can't see any world in which the Falcons don't beat this spread. And to be more ambitious, I originally had a conversation with these lovely gentlemen about the Falcons just winning outright. That's a much bolder statement to make. So I just settled on them beating the 5.5 point spread. There you go. Big on the Falcons this week.
So we got just to overview. And again, you guys can make these bets by themselves or parlay them together. But we got the Carolina Panthers against the Philadelphia Eagles plus 9.5 spread. That's an alternate spread right there. And you're getting plus 118 combined with an anytime touchdown for T. Higgins. That is plus 135. And then the traditional, so what the spread is right now, Atlanta Falcons plus 5.5 is minus 108. Totaled together, that's plus 886. So 886 odds. $10 wins you $88.60. Do what you please with your numbers there. Bet appropriately. We're not trying to promote gambling here. We're trying to give you some good options that could really potentially help you win some money for the week. But back to the podcast, we really appreciate you guys joining. We really appreciate you guys viewing the podcast. So if you could subscribe, share, we really appreciate it. We're ready for week 14, last fantasy football week, regular season fantasy football week for 98% of fantasy leagues, and we'll get you ready for the playoffs next week.
Yes, sir. Let's go. Week 14, baby.
Thank you so much, guys.
All right. Y'all have a good night.
Have a great night, everyone.